So, here we are. The day my whole world tilted on its axis. I found out my wife, Amber, was cheating on me. Now, I know what you're probably thinking. Was it with her boss? Some smooth-talking guy from her office? Or, maybe it was one of those gym brothers who's always posting shirtless selfies? Nope. None of that. The truth is, even now, it's still something I can't fully wrap my head around. But I'll get to that. Let me back up a bit. Amber and we've been together for 5 years, married for 3. I'm 27, she's 26. Young, right? We were supposed to be building our lives together, maybe thinking about kids down the line, all that. At least, that's what I thought we were doing. We came from good families, too. My parents? They loved her like their own daughter. Every time we went over to visit, my mom would ask how Amber was doing before even bothering to ask about me. And her parents? Let's just say her dad had no problem telling me I was the best thing that ever happened to his daughter. We were the golden couple, or at least, that's how it looked from the outside. It was a Sunday, the weekend winding down after spending a couple of days at my parents' house. We'd had one of those classic family get-togethers, lots of food, maybe a little too much wine, and all the catching up we could handle. I'll admit, I went a little heavy on the drinks the night before, but hey, it was a good time. So Amber offered to drive us back home, and I wasn't gonna argue. She'd always been the designated driver in our relationship, anyway. I was half asleep, slumped against the passenger window, still feeling the haze from the drinks. The drive was quiet, just the hum of the engine and the sound of tires on the road. It was one of those moments where nothing seemed out of place. Everything felt normal. Until it wasn't. We were cruising along, maybe 10 minutes from home, when flashing lights filled the rearview mirror. We were getting pulled over. Amber sighed, muttering something about how she might have been going a little too fast. I didn't think much of it. I was too zoned out to care. The cop approached Amber's window and asked for her license and registration, the usual. Again, nothing out of the ordinary, just a regular traffic stop. Amber smiled, being her usual charming self, and reached into her bag to get her license. That's when I saw it. A condom. A goddamn wrapped condom sticking out from the corner of her wallet. Now, let me be clear about something, Amber and I. We don't use condoms. Haven't since we first moved in together, which was long before we even got married. We're both clean, we trust each other, well, at least I thought we did, and we're married. No need for them. So, seeing that little square piece of latex tucked inside her bag like it belonged there? It was like getting sucker punched right in the gut. I just stared at it, my brain trying to make sense of what I was seeing. Was it a leftover from before we got married? No, that didn't make sense. I knew she used to carry them when we first started dating, but that was years ago. Was it for a friend? Nah, I couldn't even believe I was trying to convince myself of that one. My mind went to the darkest places almost instantly. My ears started ringing. You know that sound? Like when you're underwater, and everything is muffled, distant? That's exactly what it felt like. The cop was talking, but it was like I was hearing him from miles away. My chest tightened, my head started spinning. I wasn't sure if I was about to puke or pass out. Sir, are you okay? The officer's voice finally cut through the fog. He was looking at me, probably because I had this glazed-over, deer-in-the-headlights look on my face. I snapped back, stuttering, yeah, I'm fine. Which, looking back, is probably the biggest lie I've ever told. Amber, without skipping a beat, chimed in with this cute little laugh she always does when she's nervous and said, "Oh, he just had a bit too much to drink last night. You know how it is." I almost lost it right there. The way she was acting like everything was fine, like she wasn't hiding something, like she didn't have that damn condom in her bag. I clenched my fists in my lap, trying to keep it together. The cop didn't seem to notice anything wrong. He handed her a warning and sent us on our way. The rest of the drive? I was dead silent. My mind was racing, trying to figure out what the hell I just saw. 1,000 questions were running through my head. Was she cheating? When did it start? Who the hell was she with? Every minute that passed felt like another punch to the gut. I kept replaying the scene in my mind, that little corner of the condom sticking out, mocking me. But I didn't say a word. I couldn't. Not yet. I didn't know what I'd be starting if I opened my mouth. Maybe it was just one small thing, a misunderstanding, or maybe it was the tip of an iceberg I wasn't ready to face yet. I had no clue. I had to get to the bottom of it, but I wasn't about to blow up and start screaming in the car. No, if I was going to confront her, it had to be with a clear head and a solid plan. So, I just sat there, staring out the window, the anger simmering under the surface, my thoughts spiraling. I didn't even look at her. She tried to make small talk a couple of times, but I just mumbled some half-assed responses. She probably thought I was just hungover, but in reality, I was plotting. All I knew for sure at that moment, this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. After that day, I knew I couldn't just sit around waiting for answers to fall into my lap. I needed to figure out what the hell was going on, and I had to do it without tipping Amber off. So, I made a decision. I took 2 weeks off from work, told my boss I needed some mental health time, and made sure everything was cleared. The catch? I didn't tell Amber a thing. As far as she knew, I was still going to work every day, business as usual. I rented a car from some no-name place a couple of towns over, nothing flashy, just something that would blend in. I didn't want her to see me tailing her in our own damn car, that's for sure. And for the next 2 weeks, I became a full-time stalker. It's not something I'm proud of, but I had to know. I had to find out if she was sneaking off to meet some guy when she thought I wasn't looking. So there I was, waking up early, kissing her goodbye like I was headed to the office, and then watching her every move. I followed her to work, to the grocery store, even to her weekly yoga class. I'd park a block away, binoculars in hand, waiting for something, anything, to happen. At one point, I even followed her to a salon, sitting in that rental car for 2 hours while she got her nails done. Yeah, I know how that sounds, but I had to be thorough. If there was something going on, I was going to catch it. But you know what I found after 2 weeks of playing detective? Nothing. Not a goddamn thing. I mean, seriously, nothing. No sneaky rendezvous, no meeting some guy in a parking lot for a quickie, no shady messages or phone calls. Just Amber, living her life like normal. Going to work, running errands, hanging out with her friends. And every day, I felt like a bigger idiot. I started questioning everything. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe that condom wasn't for what I thought. Maybe I was losing my mind over nothing. But then, about a week and a half in, something started gnawing at the back of my mind. A thought so twisted, so absurd, that I didn't even want to entertain it at first. But the more I followed her, the more I came up empty-handed, the louder that thought got. What if it wasn't a man? I shook it off at first. There was no way. I mean, Amber and I. We had a pretty decent sex life, as far as I knew. She was always into men, she'd never shown any interest in women, at least not openly. We'd even joked about it once or twice, but it was always just that, a joke. Nothing serious. But as the days went on, that idea kept creeping back. What if I wasn't looking for the right thing? What if I was out here, chasing shadows, while the truth was staring me right in the face? I didn't want to believe it. Hell, I couldn't believe it. But once that seed was planted, I knew I wouldn't have any peace until I tested the theory. So, I stopped looking for her to meet up with some guy. Instead, I started watching her interactions with her friends more closely. Her co-workers, her gym buddies, the women she went out to brunch with. Was there something off there? Something I hadn't noticed before? Damn it, I didn't want this to be real. But I couldn't shake the feeling that maybe, just maybe, I'd been focusing on the wrong thing all along. And that's when it all started to click. After those 2 weeks of finding nothing, things started to settle down a little, or at least Amber thought they had. But I was still on edge. The doubt never left me. I was still questioning everything she did, every look she gave, every phone call she made. And then, a few weeks later, we had to head back to my parents' house for another one of those family get-togethers. The kind that usually felt comfortable and easy, but this time, it was like a pressure cooker for me. I insisted on driving, mostly because I needed to feel like I had some control over something. Amber sat in the passenger seat, scrolling through her phone, completely oblivious to the storm raging inside my head. The whole ride, my knuckles were white against the steering wheel, my heart pounding. I was tense, so damn tense, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to break. But I had to act normal, right? I couldn't let on that anything was wrong. Not yet. When we got there, everything was as it usually was. My parents greeted us with their usual warmth. Hugs, laughs, the smell of my mom's cooking filling the house. I tried to keep up the facade, putting on a smile and making small talk, all while my mind was spinning. Amber seemed relaxed, too relaxed, and that only made my paranoia worse. As the night went on, like usual, the women called it an early night. Amber, my mom, and my sister went off to bed while my dad and I stayed up drinking. My dad and I had always been close, sharing beers, telling stories, and bonding over our usual bullshit. But that night, something was off. Maybe it was just me, but I felt a distance I couldn't explain. Maybe it was the alcohol, maybe it was the weight of what I suspected, but I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something deeper beneath the surface. Normally, I could hold my liquor pretty well, but I decided to play it differently that night. I faked being a lot drunker than I was. After a few beers, I slurred my words, stumbled around a bit, and told my dad I was calling it a night. Amber was already upstairs, and I made sure to make a show of it, staggering up to the room like I was half out of my mind. Once I got into bed, I laid there, still as a rock, listening. 10 minutes passed, felt like hours, but I kept my breathing steady, pretending to be dead asleep. And then, just like I thought she would, Amber got up. She slipped out of bed quietly, probably thinking I was too drunk to notice. I waited, counting the seconds, letting her get a little distance. After about 5 minutes, I got up too. The house was dark and quiet, only the soft hum of the refrigerator breaking the silence. I stepped lightly, my heart pounding so loud in my ears I thought it would give me away. And then, I heard it, a faint rustling coming from one of the side rooms. I moved closer, step by step, my stomach twisting into knots. I reached for the doorknob and turned it, pushing the door open. What I saw. It was like something out of a nightmare. There was Amber, my wife, completely naked. And she wasn't alone. She was with him. My father. I stood there, frozen for a split second, my brain struggling to process what my eyes were seeing. But then rage took over. I didn't even think. I just acted. I stormed in and slapped my father across the face, hard enough to leave a mark. He barely had time to react before I grabbed him by the arm, dragged him out of the room, and shoved him toward the front door. He didn't even have time to grab his clothes. I kicked him out onto the front lawn, stark naked, yelling at him to get the hell out of my sight. I hoped to God that the neighbors' cameras caught every second of it. Maybe they'd help make him infamous. Then, I turned back to Amber, who was standing there, frozen, her face pale. "You're a complete idiot," I spat, my voice shaking with anger and disgust. "You've ruined everything." She didn't even try to defend herself. She couldn't. She knew she'd been caught. But I still didn't understand it, why this happened. Of all people, why my father? I was furious, disgusted, heartbroken, all at once. I glared at her, shaking, and asked through clenched teeth, "How long?" She looked down, avoiding my eyes, and whispered, "Since the beginning of our marriage." Those words, "since the beginning," they tore through me like a bullet. Everything I thought I knew, everything I believed about our relationship, crumbled in an instant. It was all a lie. Every kiss, every promise, every memory, it was all tainted. I couldn't stay there. I couldn't even look at her. Without another word, I grabbed my keys, stormed out, and got into the car. I didn't care that it was the middle of the night or that I had no idea where I was going. I just needed to get the hell away from her, from all of it. I drove for what felt like hours, the weight of everything crushing down on me. My wife. My father. The betrayal. The lies. I didn't know what to do, but one thing was clear: I could never go back. The next morning, I woke up feeling like I'd been hit by a truck. My body was sore from the tension of the night before, and my head was pounding, but not from the beers, it was from the weight of everything that had happened. The betrayal was fresh, raw, gnawing at me like an open wound that wouldn't stop bleeding. I sat there for a while, just staring at the ceiling, trying to gather my thoughts. My father. My wife. The two people who were supposed to be constants in my life had just blown it all apart. And for what? My father was supposed to be a role model, someone I could look up to. Amber? She was supposed to be my partner, my wife. But they'd both betrayed me in the worst way possible, and there was no coming back from that. I wasn't the type to let something like this sit. I knew what I had to do, and I was going to do it fast. No dragging this out, no second chances. I reached for my phone and made the first call, my lawyer. I'd worked with him before on some business stuff, but this was personal. "Hey, it's me," I said, my voice a little shaky at first, but I steadied it. "I need a divorce. Fast." There was a pause on the other end. "Are you sure?" he asked, like I hadn't thought this through already. "Yeah," I said, sharper this time. "I'm sure." My wife's. I caught her. "It's ugly. I want this over with as quickly as possible, and I'm not giving her a damn thing. The house is mine, everything is mine. She's not getting a dime." He could tell by the tone of my voice that I wasn't messing around. We talked logistics for a bit, and he assured me he'd start working on the papers that day. I hung up, feeling a small bit of satisfaction. It wasn't much, but it was something. Then came the second call. This one wasn't about Amber. This one was about my father. The anger I felt toward him? It was different. With Amber, it was heartbreak mixed with betrayal, but with him, it was pure rage. And I had something on him. I knew about some of his shady dealings, stuff with the IRS. I never thought I'd use it, but after last night, he deserved everything coming his way. I dialed up the IRS tip line. Cold, calculated. I knew exactly what to say. "There's someone you need to investigate," I said, my voice steady. I gave them the details, his business, the fraudulent filings I knew about, everything. I didn't hold back. By the time I was done, I knew they had enough to at least start looking into him. And once they did, there'd be no getting out of it for him. I almost hoped he'd end up in jail. When I hung up, a strange kind of calm settled over me. I wasn't done, not by a long shot, but those two calls were the first steps. I had taken control, and that felt like a victory in a day where everything else felt like a defeat. I stood up, grabbed a beer from the fridge, and sat down on the couch. The house was quiet, too quiet. I didn't even bother turning on the TV. I just sat there with the bottle in my hand, staring off into space. It was surreal, thinking about how much had changed in just a matter of hours. The life I thought I had? It was gone. Completely shattered. And now I had to pick up the pieces. A few beers later, I heard the door creak open. I didn't even need to look to know it was Amber. She stepped inside, quiet, her footsteps hesitant. She was a mess, hair disheveled, face streaked with tears. She had probably been crying the whole time she was gone, but I didn't care. Not anymore. She just stood there for a moment, like she was afraid to say anything. And then, when she did speak, it was exactly what I expected. "I'm so sorry," she whispered, her voice shaky, like that was going to fix everything. I made a mistake." A mistake? That's what she was calling it. A mistake? I didn't even look at her. I just stared straight ahead, my voice cold and empty. "Pack your things," I said. "You're moving out. The house is mine. After the divorce, it's still going to be mine." I could feel her eyes on me, shocked, like she didn't expect me to be so blunt, so final. She took a step closer. "But, we can fix this." "Please, I didn't mean for it to. I don't give a damn what you meant," I snapped, finally turning to face her. "It's over, Amber. I'm done. I don't want to hear another word. Start packing." Her face crumpled, but she still didn't move. She just stood there, staring at me, probably thinking that if she cried enough, I'd break down. Maybe in the past, that would have worked, but now, I felt nothing but disgust. She wasn't getting to me anymore. I was past that. When she still didn't move, I got up, walked over to the closet, and grabbed a suitcase. I started throwing her clothes into it, random pieces from the closet, not caring what I grabbed. Shirts, pants, whatever. It didn't matter. She stood there, her eyes wide, like she couldn't believe this was happening. But I wasn't stopping. I packed that suitcase, shoved it into her arms, and pushed her toward the door. "Get out," I said, my voice low but firm. "I'll send the rest of your stuff by mail." She stood there, holding the suitcase, her face pale and streaked with tears. She opened her mouth to say something, but I wasn't interested. I didn't want to hear any more excuses, any more apologies. It was too late for that. I turned my back on her, walked back to the couch, and sat down, grabbing another beer. I heard the door shut softly behind her, and just like that, she was gone. I sat there, staring at the wall, beer in hand, feeling nothing. No satisfaction, no relief, just this emptiness that had settled in where my life used to be. It wasn't over yet, but for the first time, I was in control. And that was all that mattered. A few months after the divorce, things were finally starting to settle, but not in the way I thought they would. You know how people tell you that time heals everything? Yeah, that's bullshit. Time doesn't heal anything. It just helps you get used to the scars. The wounds are still there, just not bleeding as much. I was left with more than just a broken marriage. It felt like everything I knew, everything I built, came crashing down. The divorce wasn't just between Amber and me, it split my whole life wide open, including my family. Out of my parents, I only keep in touch with my mom now. After what my dad did, there's just no way back. I haven't spoken a single word to him since that night I threw him out of the house, and I don't plan on ever doing it again. He's dead to me. Mom, though? She's been a rock. Well, as much as she could be, considering everything. I mean, it's not every day you find out your husband of over 30 years slept with your son's wife. She took it hard, real hard. I still remember the phone call when I told her. Her voice broke, and I could hear her struggling to keep it together. She kept saying, "I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry you had to go through this, like it was somehow her fault. It wasn't. None of this was her fault. My father was just a bastard. But she didn't sit around and cry for long. A few weeks later, she made her move. She filed for divorce from him. Just like that, 30 years of marriage down the drain, all because of his selfish, disgusting choices. She said she couldn't stand to look at him anymore, let alone live with him. And I don't blame her. I was proud of her for that. It was like watching her reclaim her life, piece by piece, after everything had fallen apart. She's been staying with her sister for now, trying to figure out her next steps. We talk all the time now, more than we did before all this happened. It's funny how that works, isn't it? When your life goes up in flames, you realize who actually matters. She's the only part of my old life I've kept. As for me, I couldn't stay in that house anymore. Every corner of it was filled with reminders of what had happened. The kitchen where Amber and I used to cook together, laughing over a bottle of wine. Now, it just felt like a hollow place where the laughter had turned to lies. The bedroom? Forget about it. The bed where I thought I was safe, where I thought I knew my wife, well, that bed was nothing more than a reminder of how blind I'd been. I couldn't breathe in that house anymore. So I sold it. It wasn't easy, though. Every time I walked through the empty rooms, packing up what little I cared to keep, I was hit with waves of memories. Some good, most of them now poisoned by what came after. I remember standing in the living room, looking around at the bare walls, and realizing that none of this mattered anymore. The furniture, the memories, the life we built together, it was all just stuff. I left behind a lot of it because, honestly, I didn't want to take any part of that old life with me. Just packed up my clothes, a few personal things, and that was it. I remember the day I handed over the keys. The new owners were this young couple, so full of hope and excitement about moving in. They were starting their life together, and all I could think was, I hope you never end up like me. I shook their hands, wished them luck, and got the hell out of there. After I sold the house, I started planning my next move. Staying in that city wasn't an option. Everywhere I went, there were reminders. The coffee shop where Amber and I used to go on lazy Sunday mornings. The park where we walked our dog, planning our future together. Even running into people we both knew, it was too much. The whispers behind my back, the sideways glances, the fake sympathy, I'm sorry about what happened, it all just pissed me off. I couldn't take it anymore. I knew I had to get out. So I started looking at other cities, places where no one knew me, where I could start fresh. I looked at places I'd never even considered before. Cities far enough away that there was no chance I'd accidentally bump into someone from my old life. I needed a clean slate. After a couple of months of searching, I found a place. A city a few hundred miles away, far enough from the disaster of my past but close enough that I could still visit my mom when she needed me. It's not huge, but it's big enough that I can disappear into the crowd, which is exactly what I want right now. I found a small apartment, nothing fancy, just enough for me to get back on my feet. A place where I can breathe again, without the suffocating memories of Amber, my father, and everything else. I've packed up my stuff, sold the rest, and I'm ready to go. It's strange, really, this mix of fear and relief. Part of me is scared as hell. Starting over at 27 wasn't exactly part of the plan, but after everything, it's what I need. I have no idea what's waiting for me in this new city. New job, new people, new life. But it's got to be better than what I left behind. I'm ready to move forward, even if I'm not exactly sure what forward looks like yet. But one thing's for sure, I'm not looking back. Not anymore. I've already lost too much, and I'm done carrying the weight of my past around with me. It's time to start over. It's been a while since my last update, and I figured it's time to fill everyone in on how things have been going. Honestly, life's taken a pretty wild turn since I packed up and moved to that new city. I didn't know what to expect when I left, but things have fallen into place in ways I couldn't have imagined. First off, let's talk about work. I landed a solid job not long after I moved, nothing glamorous, but stable, and something I actually enjoy. I'm working in a mid-sized tech company as a project manager. The hours are decent, the people are chill, and I'm no longer carrying the weight of my personal life into the office like I used to. It's a fresh start, and it feels good. There's something to be said about throwing yourself into work after everything goes to hell. It helped me get my mind off all the crap I went through, and honestly, it's helped me rebuild my confidence. I needed that. I've also been keeping busy outside of work. I got into a couple of side gigs. I started doing freelance consulting on the side for small businesses that need help with their tech setup. It's not a huge moneymaker, but it keeps me sharp and gives me a little extra cash for myself. That, plus a few investments I've been smart with, means I'm in a pretty good spot financially. I'm not living large, but I'm comfortable. And after everything I've been through, that feels like a win. Now, for the part one no some of you are probably wondering about, relationships. After all the mess with Amber, I wasn't exactly eager to jump into anything serious. I spent a good chunk of time focusing on myself, figuring out what I wanted, what I needed. I went out on a few dates here and there, nothing too serious. It was more about getting back out there, reminding myself that not every relationship is doomed to fail. But, and this is where things get interesting, I did meet someone. Her name's Lily, and we've been seeing each other for about 5 months now. I wasn't looking for anything serious at first, but sometimes life throws you a curveball. We met through mutual friends at a party, and we just clicked. She's smart, funny, and real, none of that superficial nonsense. What I like about her most is that she's upfront about who she is, and she doesn't take any bullshit, which, after everything I've been through, is exactly what I need. Lily knows about my past, and she didn't run the other way when I told her everything. Instead, she listened, gave me space, and didn't push me to move faster than I was ready for. She's the kind of person who gets it, who understands that we've all got baggage, but it doesn't have to define us. And for the first time in a long time, I feel like I can trust someone again. It's still early days, but things are going well. Better than I expected, honestly. So yeah, life's looking up. It's not perfect, and there are still days when I think about everything that went down with Amber and my father. But those thoughts don't linger as long as they used to. I've moved on, and I'm in a better place, both mentally and physically. I'm focused on building something new, something better. Before I wrap this up, I just want to say one thing to everyone who's been following my story, offering support, advice, or just reading along: take care of your relationships. I'm not saying you should walk on eggshells, but pay attention. Communicate, be honest, and don't take your other half for granted. I didn't see the signs with Amber until it was too late. I let myself get comfortable, and that was part of the problem. Anyway, that's where I'm at. Thanks for sticking with me through this wild ride, and I hope you're all doing well. Take care of yourselves, and take care of your halves. You never know how much they might mean to you until it's too late. Good luck, everyone.